All right, Rising. Well, welcome to a new year, a new round of Groves. We're super excited to kick off the semester as we kind of bond together and get to know each other and really become community together as a church body. And kind of before we really dive into the content or kind of share the content that we're going to be going over the semester, I want to just briefly go over why do we do this? And maybe this is your first time, or maybe you've been doing this for 12 years and you're like, we just keep doing this over and over and over again. Of why we have Groves. And if you haven't been in our next class or connection lunch, maybe you haven't heard this in a while. So just kind of want to refresh your memories and plant the seed of the greater reason we do this. And because basically, in one of our core values here at Rising, if you don't know, is that we will grow together. Just like we want to invest in next generation, or we want to do things passionately, or we want to, minister to the world, we want to be intentional about growing together, building deeper relationships and connections with one another. In fact, this is how it's stated in our core values. It says, we will be intentional about developing relationships with one another, encouraging and supporting one another to love God and to seek Him with all that we are. It's saying we're going to be intentional. We're not just going to assume it's going to happen naturally. We're going to be intentional about trying to develop connection and relationship, deeper connection and relationship with one another. And the reason that we call our Groves, going back again, as this is a reminder to you, is because one of my favorite trees in the entire world is a giant sequoia out in California. And if you haven't seen these, they're just magnificent. They're huge. Some of them are over 2,000 years old. You can get 40 people hold hands, and you can't even, hold your hands around the trunk of these things. They're that big. And what's interesting about them is, even though they're the largest living organism on the planet, it's like they have very shallow roots. And so what happens is, if they're kind of alone by themselves out in the forest, they'll eventually get above the tree line, all the other trees. And then once they're above the tree lines, they face all the storms, the wind and the lightning and the rain. And what happens is they easily get toppled over because they're top heavy. And so they'll just, timber, they're done. And so when you see fully grown, mature giant sequoias, they're found in groves. They're found clumped together, because what happens is their roots start to intertwine with one another. And therefore, when they all get above the tree line, all the rest of the trees, then the wind's blowing against not just one, it's blowing against all of them. And they're all kind of holding each other strong and keep each other firm. And that's kind of the image, the symbolism that we want for our growth. So when you come each week, whether you meet on Sunday nights, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, I want you to have that thought in your head, I'm coming here because I'm intentionally trying to grow my roots into the people that I'm in Grove with. That I'm trying to develop these deeper connections and relationships and bonds, because at some point, all of us, we're gonna face a storm. We're gonna go through some difficulty, and we're gonna need our brothers and sisters. We're gonna need a support system that's gonna keep us standing so that we don't topple over. So that's kind of the whole imagery of what we're trying to accomplish each and every week. And so that's why we got to be praying for each other and supporting each other. In fact, one of the verses that it mentions on on our core values when it comes to growing together comes from the book of Acts. In fact, it's a passage we're going to be talking about this coming Sunday, but it's Acts 2:42, where it simply says this: they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, and to fellowship, and to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. He's saying this is what they devoted themselves. They were seeking after this. They were chasing after this. They were persisting. They were constantly attending to this idea of teaching and fellowship together, and breaking bread, eating together, and praying together. And so that's kind of the image that we're going to continue unpacking, but that's what we're trying to do in Groves. And in fact, this semester, I'm going to be honest with you, we're taking a little bit of a different approach than maybe we've done the past couple years. We've done some pretty intense studies over the past couple years here in Isaiah and Revelation and stuff, where it's really deep, what does this mean? And what's this talking about? How do you explain this? And this semester, we're going to kind of take a different angle. And so we're going to go basically kind of following along with what we're doing in Acts on Sunday morning, but kind of go into the question I think I posed on one of the first weeks. And that is, hey, this is stuff that happened 2,000 years ago, when there was no church, there were no gatherings, there were no small groups, there was none of this. And so this is kind of where the origin story of the church is. And how awesome would it be if there was an Acts book 2 or book 3 or book 4 or Acts 2024, and this idea of the church continues. And although we're reading about on Sunday mornings the origin of the church, the launch of the church, the birth of the church, how did the church expand and grow? and go from Jerusalem to the ends of the earth. And so what we're going to be doing, it's going to be a little eclectic, I would say, when it comes to our growth, because we're going to kind of look at part two, I guess, of Acts and the stories that are beyond what's in the Bible, and looking how the gospel spread to Africa or to Asia. We're going to be looking at some biographies of some of the Christian warriors, the people that kind of carried the gospel message to difficult places, and hopefully being inspired by their stories. We're going to be having some stories from modern day missionaries and kind of sharing what it's like to be taking the gospel into difficult places today. So it's going to be a little bit of some of our mission partners with some biographies, with just some stories and a lot of interaction. But it's not going to be, I would say, as heavy as it's been in the past on like just pure Bible teaching, in a sense like, okay, we're going to read a chapter and we're going to discuss it. It's going to be hopefully a lot more of the fellowship and sharing with each other and praying together, and hopefully also being inspired by stories of how God's been using people for the last 2,000 years to share the gospel message to a broken and lost world that will hopefully inspire us to do the same and to join the saints and join the great cloud of witnesses and spreading the gospel of Jesus. So I hope you're excited about that. We're going to be talking a lot about missions today and in the past, and hopefully that's a topic that you'll get excited about. But this session, you're really going to talk about kind of what the bigger picture of, Acts and the missions and why we do these kinds of things. And hopefully through the semester, it's going to be educational, but also inspiring. So I hope you're excited for a new semester and really start to get to know each other better. And we will check back in with you next week.